Oh, there it goes. Okay, cool. All right. Yeah. Okay. Technical difficulties. Appreciate you, sir. All right. How about now? Can you guys hear me now? We changed over to this new microphone, and we put in an audio deal to make it sound a little bit better. And every once in a while, you get some stuff that doesn't work right. So I appreciate y'all's patience on that. We'll go ahead and get the TikTok going again, because otherwise, people give me hell over here on TikTok too. Resume. There we go. Okay. Now then, we'll get into all the fun stuff. What I was rambling on about when you guys couldn't hear me was the EVM sidechain going live this morning for the XRPL for interoperability between Onyx and all the smart contracts there for really stable coins also. So that's the other big piece that I don't think people maybe really comprehend here is that you need smart contract capability for stablecoins to work as they're intended. They're going to put constraints around stuff, and not all of it's going to be malicious. Like if you want points for using certain, stable coins, and you want those to add up for stuff to be able to redeem them for travel points or something else, well, you need a smart contract for that. If you want a escrow option for a transaction, oh, thanks, babe.
I don't think TikTok's working.
It's working.
Okay.
I mean, people are on here.
That wasn't my experience.
Okay, well, some people are on here. They're asking questions.
Okay.
Yeah. So for the stable coins, you're going to have that smart contract capability, and now we have that. So now we get the stablecoin bill passed, and we'll actually get a bunch of liquidity that moves on to the XRPL in ways that I don't think people really comprehend yet. People saw a large migration from Ethereum over to Salana in the last cycle, and that was because it was cheaper and faster to transact there on Salana. And I think you're going to see the same migration from Salana because it goes down frequently, and it's not quite as scalable as the XRPL as far as speed and throughput. So if you had the smart contract capability on an adjacent chain that allows for interoperability, you've also got Wormhole. You've got a bunch of other layers that allow for interoperability between the XRPL for settlement using XRP and all of these smart contract networks now, which is a big, big deal. So that should lead to, again, the supply and demand dynamic that we've been talking about. And, potentially some price appreciation here, which is what a lot of people are waiting on. We've also got the case. Last time I saw you guys was Wednesday night. So since then, we've had some big news come out about the case. Brad says that, we got the judge's ruling on Thursday, which was basically she's going to leave it as is. And it's the SEC and Ripple's, the ball's in their court now. So Ripple in particular, we haven't heard from the SEC yet, has come back and said they're going to drop their appeal, their cross appeal against the SEC. And we should see the SEC also drop their appeal. So what does that do? It would effectively end the case. We would have full clarity on what the outcome is, which is a fine for Ripple of $125 million and the injunction against their continued sales to institutions. There's some conjecture around, is that forward-facing sales for Ripple to institutions, or does it just apply to their, pre-negotiated contracts early on? I don't know. One lawyer says one thing and another one says something else. I would like it to be forward sales, because that would, even if there was just some friction in buying from Ripple versus going to the secondary market, institutions are going to go to the secondary market and on exchanges to purchase XRP versus buying from Ripple, because it's going to be faster and easier. So again, that would lead to more demand on the secondary market, on exchanges, and therefore more price appreciation, which again, we're all here for. So that's my thought behind it. That's why I think they would want that outcome. My tinfoil hat says that they've wanted this the whole time, but the SEC and Ripple needed the SEC to save some face, and so that's why they had the appeal. and they actually came to a lower settlement number with this new SEC. And they also, advocated for Ripple to come back and get the injunction against them repealed. But the judge, was a stickler and said that that the ruling stands as it initially was ruled. So this person's asked about XRP price in December of 2025. We got a lot of things lining up here for a 4-digit XRP. I'm going to keep saying it. I think that there's a significant possibility for that in the near future if we do see everything that I've talked about in the domino theory playing out. So for those that are new here, we got 1,500 people here on YouTube. We got a lot of people on X. And we also have a lot of people over here on TikTok. If you haven't, I would go check out the domino theory that I put out. It's been a year and 4 months ago at this point. And so 16 months ago, we talked about a sequence of events that would lead to some significant price appreciation for XRP and basically a supply shock where there's not enough supply on the secondary market to meet the amount of demand that would be coming for it. We've got ETFs going live. We've got treasuries buying up XRP. We've got institutions looking to buy XRP to be able to provide liquidity for their settlement and treasury. You've got banks and other people looking to acquire more. You've got FOMO from retail after they find out that Amazon and Google and Apple are going to likely be using XRP to settle their international transactions and remittance, and also may hold some XRP in their treasury. You've got the U.S. government, who also may want some XRP if they don't already have pre-negotiated contracts from Ripple back in 2014 when they met with the Fed. Greg Kidd was like third or fourth employee at Ripple, and he orchestrated a meeting with the Federal Reserve early on. So is there XRP already on the balance sheet? We don't know. We don't know if that is on the U.S. Balance sheet or not, because they haven't done a full audit of the U.S.'s balance sheet. And that's been disclosed by the crypto czar. I think Sachs is his last name. Anyway, he's also said that we're going to have a really bullish July here, and I would agree with him. So before we hop into the questions tonight, I do have some topics that my wife has given me. She is the wonderful lady that you guys interact with in a lot of the comments and messages across multiple social media platforms. So be nice if you think you're messaging me. It's my wife a lot of the time. So be nice. Sometimes it is me that responds, but most of the time it's her. So she's tasked me with going over real estate because a lot of people want to leverage real estate in some capacity. And I think that makes a lot of sense, especially for the tax benefits that you get from it. And if you've never dealt with real estate before, you may not be familiar with those, but you get to amortize or depreciate your real estate over a certain period of time after your purchase. And the benefit of that in the short term, let's say if you did want to purchase a property, is you could get a cost seg analysis done. And this, I don't know if it's this way in other countries. I'm just going to speak specifically to the US. So you can go to, let's say you're doing a multifamily property. We'll just talk about that because that's something that's on most people's mind. Commercial property, you need a pretty interesting application to repurpose a lot of commercial nowadays. You've seen a lot of people move to work from home, so that's not quite as prominent as it used to be. But multifamily is still pretty significant, and I think will continue to grow, especially in secondary and tertiary markets. Primary markets, you're not going to get the same alpha unless you're building new, and then it's a longer sales cycle and a longer time to recoup your money. But there are some benefits, ground up as well. So let's say you're in a secondary market, and what deems a primary, secondary, tertiary market? It's going to be the population in that area. So you might go, I live close to Dallas, so we'll just take that. Dallas would be a primary market. A suburb outside of Dallas would be a secondary market, and then a tertiary market would be even further out away from that, 10 to 20,000 people, sometimes less than that. And you're going to look for something that is newer than 1980, 1982. There's some building codes and things that went in around that time that make that property a bit sturdier and longer lasting. versus things that are older and it's up to certain pieces of the code. So if you do renovate it, you're not going to have to like redo the plumbing and a bunch of other stuff. And again, this is all secondhand knowledge I've garnered from working with people in real estate. This isn't my game, but I know enough to be dangerous. So what we're going to talk about it here. So let's say you find one of those properties. It's a good deal. You think you can raise the rents in this area. The population's growing, and you're going to buy it. Maybe you own or finance it. Maybe you get it on a note from the bank. Most of these you can get financed. What people don't realize about real estate is you're going to need some capital, but a lot of the time, if you're the one running the deal and negotiating the deal, you can go find the capital. And especially after you've done a few of these and been on the note, then you can do them yourself. I took investment real estate in college, which is actually a pretty good course to take. I understood a lot of this stuff that maybe some people don't if you never had exposure to it. So you're going to figure out what you're looking for. But if you find something 1980 or newer, it's got a pitched roof on it, or a flat roof, you're going to put a pitched roof on it. You're going to redo the ACs. You're going to gut the inside, and you're going to, maybe redo the kitchens. You scrape the popcorn ceilings off. You're going to make it look newer and nicer. Update some things, and you'll be able to raise the rents in certain areas. Again, if it's an expanding population. So let's say, as an example, there was one not too far from me that was like, you also want to do something more than 32 units. Less than 32 units is going to be hard to manage. Get a management company to come out and do it for you. If you have more than that, there's enough doors that it makes sense to have a management company actually come manage the property versus you doing it yourself, which can be very painful if you've never done it. And it's worth it to pay a property management company. There's a lot of large ones that do it for a very economical price. So again, you're going to be looking at something that's more than 32 doors. The one that I looked at was, I think, 57 doors. It was a 1987 build. It had a flat roof. We needed to put a pitched roof on it. It was going to cost close to $600,000 in renovations, and I think it was 1.8 million at the time to purchase it. I probably should have done it, to be honest with you. But anyway, so you'd be in 2.4 million on it. And you're going to look at the cash flow on it. It was 99% occupancy. Like, that's another big deal. Most places, if they're above 92% occupancy, you can definitely raise the rents on it and continue to keep that. If you're less than 92%, 91%, that's probably the break-even spot for you in whatever area you're in. But that's where you can kind of like see, what you could raise the rents to. So this one, I think the cash flows on it were like $180,000 per year after all expenses and bills were paid. If you raise the rents on it, I think you could get it to like a quarter million. And that's about right for the payback on that. Most of the time when you're buying a multifamily property, payback's going to be somewhere between 6 and 10 years. You're going to want to look at the cap rate, cash on cash, and IRR. Those are all things. I think I have a book here. Y'all may not like Grant Cardone. He's not my favorite person in the world. But this is a good book for just key terms and equations. And if you do want to get into, multifamily real estate, I would recommend at least reading this book and maybe a few others on that topic. And a lot of those key terms you'll understand and be able to look at, and when somebody's talking about them, you'll kind of know what they are. So anyway, all of that to say, the tax benefits. So let's say you finance it, you put 50% down, 25% down, and you sold some of your XRP or borrowed against your XRP to do that. Well, let's do it on the property that I talked about. So, 1.8, so it's 2.4 all in. We're going to finance it. We're going to get the additional cash from the bank. We're going to have to put down $800,000. You would be able to recoup that the first year, basically. So a cost seg analysis would allow you to pull forward the depreciation on different components of the building. So you have somebody come in, you pay them to do this. It's normally between $10,000 and $30,000, depends on the size of the property and how good they are and what they do. But they come in and do a cost segregation analysis, and they'll depreciate the different components of the building and pull that depreciation forward to the first 5 years in most circumstances. So sometimes it's 7 years, but like the HVAC system, the windows, the doors, they'll break down all the different components of the property instead of depreciating it over, the full term of like 27 and a half years. You'd be able to pull all of that depreciation for the total value of the property into the first 5 years. And so if you're only going to put 20 or 25% down, I'd recommend probably 25% more in most circumstances. Then you'd be able to offset the majority of that every single year in the cash flows that come off the property. Again, if it's a 6 to 10 year payback on it, and you're also going to get the appreciation on the property from what you invested in it. So let's say you got 2.4 in it after 5 years, and you've pulled forward all that cost seg and that depreciation. You're probably going to be looking at 3.2 to 3.6 that you could sell the property for. And that's how people play the real estate game. And then they take that equity that they've got in that property, the additional return or cap gains that they have on it, and they roll that through a 1031 exchange into the next bigger property or into a couple properties. And you want to make sure that you're doing that with an attorney. Don't try to do a 1031 exchange all by yourself. You have to file it the right way in order to make sure you get the tax benefit. So anyway, I know that's like drinking from a fire hose and was a lot to start this deal out with, but we've had a few people, request some real estate information. And if that interests you, we have people that this is all they do that come in and talk in the mastermind. We got Brian Wagers, who's done an interview there with us in the mastermind. And we've had Dave Pinson and a few other people come in and talk about a lot of this stuff. They've been doing this stuff for 30 plus years when it comes to real estate, and they're some of the best in the biz here domestically in the US. Dave Pinson used to manage Asset Living. I think they have like 320,000 doors or something under management, something crazy. So anyway, I got a lot of connections when it comes to real estate. And again, if that's something that interests you and you want to learn more about different types of investments, we've had people come in and talk about tiny homes and trailer parks and self-storage, all kinds of stuff there in the mastermind. So you can go to beyondbroke.com and use the code beyondbroke, all capitalized, the number 1, and then MO gets you a free month there in the group. Ashley says the 1031 exchange has to be done right. Title company can/should hold funds for you. That's exactly right. It sounds like Ashley's probably in the real estate industry. And again, you need to do it the right way. If you don't do it the right way, you're not going to get the tax benefit when it comes to that. So we've rambled on long enough. I've been going on 20 minutes here. We'll go ahead and hop into the questions because I know you guys have those burning. And we'll go ahead and run it down tonight for about another hour and a half. We got Ron. What's up, Ron? Ron's going to be excited about his returns that he gets here in a couple weeks from the fund. He says only a few minutes left to the end of the quarter. Any preliminary results or comments about the two funds? Do you foresee apps to be able to view year, month, and quarterly date results? You're going to be happy, Ron. You're going to make some money on that XRP, baby. So my team did go over what they think the returns are going to be with me today. They're in the green for the income fund. So people will get a quarterly distribution here in July on their XRP, which will be the first time that people have been paid out cash return by Digital Wealth Partners for working with us on their XRP, which is super awesome. Nothing crazy. It's not like we made buku money over the quarter or anything. I don't know if they want me to share. Reach out to your advisor and they can tell you. Again, our target is around 1% a month. If we could do 12% a year, somewhere between 8 and 20% per year on these funds. These are two 506c funds for accredited investors, and we have close to $100 million worth of XRP put into these two strategies, which is pretty cool. Nobody else is doing anything close to what we're doing. When we talk to wealth managers about this, their jaws drop. They have a hard time comprehending it. So excited about that. Yeah, you're going to get a nice check, Ron. Reach out to Matt, and he can give you the skinny on what the total is for you. Love for Life 77 says, "Hey Jake, would you explain your post on X today about Ripple might have a direct listing on the Texas Stock Exchange in 2026 or get acquired? Thank you." Absolutely. So this is something I talk about all the time in the Mastermind. Because we do private investments there in the Mastermind, and we talk about the different types of ways that you can have a liquidity event for your private investment. So Ripple is a private company. They're actually the most liquid private company, I'm going to say, in the world right now on the secondary market. There's more Ripple shares and stock traded than any other private company currently. So pretty easy to get access to that if you know who to talk to and where to look. Larger amounts, you're going to be looking at $250,000 or more in most circumstances if you do want to be direct on the cap table. We've done a lot of deals and invested in Ripple through the Mastermind. Those are all closed, so I can talk about those. But I do think that the liquidity event for Ripple is going to be, so a lot of people think about IPO. An IPO is an initial public offering. In most circumstances, when a company goes public, they're a misnomer. Not a whole lot of people know about them. And even Circle did it this way. They went around to the investment banks and diluted their shares. They gave a bunch of shares to the investment banks so that they could solicit it to their clients and drive up the price. And they're able to sell on the first day, whereas people that have been invested in the company for a long time have a lockup period. So IPO sounds great. However, with Circle, you've got 6 months until you can actually liquidate your position if you did want to sell your stock in Circle, if you were on the cap table early on. Now, if you're with the investment banks, you're doing really good. You're already up and you could sell right now. So ideally, you want a direct listing like Coinbase. Coinbase had a direct listing, and you did see the share price fall from the open, which was not so great. It is up way beyond that now. It's at a new all-time high now if people held on to their Coinbase or bought it back lower after they sold at the open. I think, on the private market, I know a lot of people that purchased Coinbase at $35 or $42, and then they IPO'd around $350. And they, again, when I say IPO'd, Coinbase was a direct listing. So those people were able to sell their shares immediately. There was no lockup period. They didn't get diluted. There wasn't a roadshow. Coinbase was a household name at that point, so they really didn't need the additional addition of the banks selling it to their clients. So Ripple, I think, is in the same boat. I think enough people know who Ripple is that they would do a direct listing. There's enough equity held by investment banks at this point that I'm aware of that I don't think that they're going to have to dilute the shares and do a whole roadshow and everything else in order to go public. But they aren't in a hurry to go public. They'll continue to do tender offers. This is the second tender offer they've done this year at $175 a share, buying up to 3% of shares back from their current shareholders, providing them liquidity. And people say, well, why would they do that? There's a lot of people that are on Ripple's cap table that invested in the Series A or B rounds at like 49 cents or $1. Okay. But they've been holding this private equity for 12 years, which is a long time for a venture capital fund or a hedge fund to hold on to an investment in a private company. And so they're looking to get liquidity to be able to, subsidize their shareholders. They would like, ideally, for Ripple to have a liquidity event so that they could exit their position and be made whole and pay their investors back. Family offices don't tend to invest that way. They tend to be in it for the longer term with private investments, especially early stage private investments. If they were on a seed round or Series A, they're there for 10, 15, 20 years. They're there for the upside in the corporation. Now, they may exit at some point strategically, but they're a little bit different game. You're not beholden to your investors on a 10-year time frame like you would be for a private equity fund or venture capital. So anyway, I think that Ripple will go public at some point, either through an acquisition or through listing directly on the Texas Stock Exchange. If the Texas Stock Exchange is tokenized, like I think it will be in 2026, Ripple would be the largest, public offering or initial public offering of any corporation. I think that they'll IPO north of $100 billion in valuation, and a share price north of $600 a share is my projection. Now, the other possibility is that they get acquired, and the only corporation that I think has enough capital and bandwidth to make that acquisition effectively is BlackRock. I know a lot of people get butthurt about that, but let's walk through why BlackRock was created real quick and what they actually do. So BlackRock really got their momentum after 2008. They became a proxy for the Federal Reserve, basically to buy up stocks and support the market, and also restructure debt. Like, that's what they really do, and they do it pretty well, is restructure debt. So there was a lot of bad debt in the market after 08. And what BlackRock did was they would buy up the bad debt, but they would package it with a bunch of good debt and they would sell it off. And so for people that don't understand the debt market, this is actually how a lot of this works. Pension funds and annuities and people that need monthly income will buy packaged debt. So in 2008, they did this with, mortgages on just residential homes. These were collateralized debt obligations, and they would package them up, and they were selling them off as grade A debt, when in reality they had ninja loans and a bunch of other not so good debt packaged together. And you can get away with some of those, right? Like, you can have a few loans go bad, but you can't have all of them go bad at the same time. And that's what happened in 08, was they got too lenient with the lending policies on first-time home buyer and retail properties. Not retail. Residential, excuse me. And so they did away with that, and they put some provisions in there where they can't do that anymore, but they still package up debt and sell it off. And that's what BlackRock has done, is they bought up a bunch of the bad debt, they packaged it with good debt, and then, pieces of it can go bad while the rest of it stays good, and those people still get their payments every month and everything's okay. What is XRP? What is this new financial system? It's a way to repackage the debt and offset the debt. And I think BlackRock is extremely involved with the implementation of this stuff at scale. I think they have a pretty big bag of XRP personally. I could be wrong about that, but I'm pretty confident in that. And do they end up with the escrow from Ripple? Is it a government that ends up with the escrow? Is it the IMF that ends up with the escrow? There's a lot of speculation on where that ends up. But if there was an acquisition of Ripple by a larger corporation or entity that had U.S. ties and interest at its core, that would allow the U.S. to, continue to remain the major superpower in the world. If you're not disrupting yourself, you will be disrupted and displaced by someone else. So anyway, I've rambled on a long time about this one, but that's my thesis. I think one or the other of those will be what transpires. We got Jay Luckett. What's going on? They say, hey, Jake, I keep getting a message on my Decent wallet to proceed with firmware update. Should I proceed or just put my crypto at risk like Ledger Nano? I'm not overly concerned about the firmware update on Decent. It's just on Ledger that there's been some not so good things happen after people have done that. So Decent, I would say go ahead with it. You want to make sure that it's up to snuff. Neil, what's going on, man? He says, hey, Legend. What's up, dude? What do you think we see first, oil or lower interest rates? Do both of these have the same effect on Japan? How bad are low rates for USDC. Looking forward to meeting in San Francisco in October. Keep being awesome. Thanks, man. Appreciate the kind words, and excited to see you there in October as well. People that don't know, we have more in-person events for the Beyond Broke Mastermind than pretty much any other group in crypto that I'm aware of. Bored Ape Yacht Club does a good number of meetings, but I'm pretty sure we're on par with them with the amount of events that we've done in real life this year for sure for the Beyond Broke Mastermind. So again, if you like meeting cool people that are in like-minded and you don't want to feel alone, you want an actual person to talk to and shake their hand and look them in the eye. We'd love to have you at those. And again, you just need to be part of the mastermind. You can be part of any level. And yeah, it's $25 a month for social, or you can try it out for free for a month. You can just use the code Beyond Broke, all capitalized, the number 1, and then MO gets you a free month there in the group. So back to your question here, you've got oil being hiked or lower interest rates. So Jerome Powell is supposedly going to step down at some point or resign. There's a lot of pressure from Trump for him to do so and lower interest rates on his way out the door. They need to lower interest rates in order to drive expansion in the economy. We've already got some breadth opening up here across markets. Maybe people are pricing that in, and that's why we've seen expansion start to happen in the stock market. Coinbase, I think we're pretty close to a rotation from Bitcoin into the altcoins here, looking at Bitcoin dominance falling, maybe a rotation into a little bit of XRP. This person says, some influencers on TikTok are flooding XRP, claiming Ripple's big wallets will rug. I mean, they sell onto the market every month. That's how Ripple funds their business. I don't make any bones about that. I was actually talking to a guy on Twitter earlier tonight. He said that their software fees fund their business. They absolutely do not. Ripple has sold $700 million plus worth of XRP this year, and the software fees for XRapid and some of the other products that they have might have made them a couple $1 million. Up to this point, they have 1,200 employees. The fees off of just their software products without the sales of XRP wouldn't even cover their C-suite salaries. So look, it's still in the long-term best interest of XRP. They've got to fund their business and get the integrations, build out all of the silos so that they can connect them with XRP. And then they'll make a bunch of money on the backside of that. I mean, Amazon lost money for the first 12 years before they actually made a profit. So anyway, other people will get butthurt about that. I'm all for it. I think it makes sense, and it allows them to run a profitable business and make acquisitions and do all the stuff that they've been doing in order to further the adoption of XRP, which is their goal. So back to the question here. I don't think lowering interest rates does the same thing as oil. It would cause the reverse carry trade to unwind. But I don't know that you would see the flight to treasuries in Japan, which is what we need in order for them to dump a bunch of treasuries. You need interest rates rising there in Japan for people to leave U.S. treasuries and flock to those. And so the dynamic wouldn't quite be the same. I don't think the results would be quite as drastic if we lowered our interest rates first, and that's what the catalyst was. I think it's going to be much more dramatic, and we will have a liquidity crisis if Japan is the one to raise their interest rates very aggressively in a short period of time because of oil spiking. And again, that's my thesis, that we're going to see conflict again escalate in the Middle East, and then, all the dominoes begin falling there. But it's a great question, Neil, and I appreciate that. I've got one other person over here on TikTok asking about vaults. Are you going to buy Uphold? Are they going to buy Uphold? I don't think Ripple's going to buy Uphold. I don't know why they would want to face. They're not a retail-focused corporation. They're B2B. The only reason they would buy Uphold is for their capability to swap XRP into fiat and further their ODL initiative. I think they would shut down the exchange or just take all the XRP that Uphold has, and Uphold has the second largest bag of XRP at 3.2 billion. So if that's what they're going to do, but I don't think that they would continue running an exchange if that's what they decided. But they do. Uphold does have Uphold Vault. There's a lot of people that have asked about that here in the past week. When it comes to custody of their assets, is that safer, better? I like Uphold Vault as a solution. They do provide you with 2 of the 3 keys. They keep the third one. They can't issue any transactions or do anything with it, but they can regenerate the other keys if you were to lose them. So, if your family isn't so great with crypto, or you think you might lose the keys, your house burned down, something bad happened, they can regenerate it for you, and it's like $5 a month. Pretty economical cost for the value that they're providing. Talked to Simon a couple months before they actually put that product out, and we might have them on the podcast this Friday. So be on the lookout for that. We'll talk about some of the things that they have coming out of the pike when it comes to wrapping your XRP via Flare, and some of the other ways that you're able to earn some returns there with Uphold. And hopefully we have some type of partnership discussion as well. And we'll see where that leads. The story is developing. So, but I like Vault. I think it's a good interim solution along with Decent. If you're just holding XRP, the problem with Vault, if you have additional assets, is it only allows for XRP and Bitcoin currently. So if those are the only 2 things you hold, then cool, you can use Vault. But if you have a wide variety of assets, again, I'd prefer Decent, just because the UI, the thumbprint, the biometric, and then everything else there. And people ask me about, what if I die? Can my wife or whoever get into it? Yes, there's I think a 6-digit password that allows you to get into it. It's numbers versus the thumbprint piece. So, and then also, a lot of people have asked about institutional custody. There's a lot of people out there propagating that they have institutional custody. I actually have a video that's going to come out with a PDF that orchestrates, like, what is my definition of institutional custody, which is a higher standard than pretty much anybody else's, I think, out there. But I want it to be that way. I want my stuff to be safe. I want it to be insured. I want it to be segregated. I want it to be bankruptcy remote. I want all of these assurances, and that's why we partner with Anchorage and have the institutional custody the way that we do at Digital Wealth Partners for people with their large amounts of digital assets, versus something like a Caleb and Brown, which is still better than most places because they do use Fireblocks and at least their stuff's segregated. And I think they do have a little bit of insurance on your stuff now. I think they have up to 10 million. We've got up to 100 million on all of our accounts. So we tend to deal with some larger clients. Currently about close to $500 million worth of XRP under management there at Digital Wealth Partners. Still got a lot of people onboarding from a couple of the promotions that we ran at the beginning of last month, which was awesome, by the way. Love you guys. Excited to be working with you. People that are watching this, for the first time, if you have more than 100,000 XRP and you want to make sure that your spouse and your children are taken care of, you want to be able to earn returns on your XRP, you want to be able to borrow against it, you want advice, and also like some really cool products that are coming to market in the near future that my my chief investment officer and our CEO there at Digital Wealth Partners brought to me today. Pretty cool stuff coming down the pike in the next 30 days here for people looking for some just basic, easy returns, kind of like a CD or a money market on your XRP. So really excited to get those to market. And I think a lot of people will be excited also. It'll be more than enough to cover any fees that we charge, and you'll get additional cash flow that you'll be able to reinvest in the asset itself, or be able to compound the asset, or take home cash on your XRP just sat there in your accounts. We've got Silverado, man. Do you think XRP breaks $20 in the next 30 to 60 days? Yes, I think that there's a high probability that that's the case, especially if we get any of the things that are like stood up, ready to go, playing out. We got AJ. What's up, man? He says, hey, Jake, as usual, thanks for taking the time out of your evening. Absolutely, dude. Thank you for the super chat. With the announcement of Brad concerning their appeal, what is your opinion on time frame for ETF approval? Also, do you feel the Grayscale has just helped push the ETF approval? Yeah, they got the swap today from their trust over to an ETF, even though it's a mixed bag. It does include XRP, so that's a pretty big deal. And I do think that we're going to see BlackRock throw their hat in the ring now that the case is pretty much over there between the SEC and Ripple for their ETF. And I think that's going to be the signal. When you see BlackRock throw their hat into the ring on the ETF, go ahead and strap in because that rocket ship's taking off, baby. We got Happy Pisces. Saw a TT video. He said Chainlink CCIP product is preferred by banks better than XRP. Two different animals. Yes, it's two different things. So cross-chain interoperability is a great deal that Chainlink provides. So Chainlink is an oracle. Okay, so what is an oracle? It brings data from the real world or off-chain data on-chain to be used inside of smart contracts. So as an example, it could be pricing for stocks. It could be pricing for private equity. It could be pricing for real estate. Whatever that is, it takes that data and then price feeds in a time series oracle. Well, it's not a time series oracle, but a price oracle inside of smart contracts for real world assets or trading of tokenized real world assets, stocks maybe. In addition to that, if there are certain constraints that need to be met for a contract to execute, it would allow those constraints to be displayed and then determined whether if they have been met or not, and wherever funds need to be released out of an escrow, that would work. And this can bridge pricing across chains. It can bridge different assets across chains and different information. But it's mainly data. CCIP is pretty clunky for settlement. It's really not meant for that. And that's what XRP does exceptionally well. And that's what I don't think people really comprehend is there's going to be multiple layers and multiple chains that allow for an amalgamation of data and value and everything in between to be moved between counterparties inside these smart contracts. And they all play a different role. So let's say like Swift. I actually did a video on this where I talked about Hedera, Chainlink, and the XRPL being used by Swift in order to facilitate the transmission of a payment. If you haven't seen that, go check it out on the channel. But I think some people want like a one size fits all for everything, when in reality, you have multiple things doing multiple pieces of a puzzle in order to put it all together. So, if anybody's saying it's one chain or one thing to rule them all, they're probably wrong. Now, if there is one that I do think is going to do the majority, that is XRP. But you still need oracles, and those are now native to the network, and you could have Chainlink as one of those. Let's see here. This person's asked, do you think another dip under $2? I don't personally see it going back under $2 again. I think those opportunities are gone, and I think it's only up and to the right from here. Have I been wrong before? Sure. Do I have a crystal ball? No. I'm just some guy on the internet. This is just my opinion. It's not financial advice. Oh, I need to say this. I always forget to say it as a disclaimer. All that's said here, these are my opinions, and they are not the opinions of Digital Ascension Group or Digital Wealth Partners. These are my opinions and mine alone. And anything stated here is not reflective of what the firm feels is true. So, gotta remind myself to do that for our compliance team. And also, nothing here is financial advice. It's all for entertainment, educational purposes only. Please always consult with your financial advisor before making any investment decisions. If you need a financial advisor, you can absolutely reach out to Digital Wealth Partners, and they are happy to provide you financial advice and tell you to buy XRP. I just can't be the one to do that because I'm not licensed. So if you want to hear somebody say that and you want real financial advice, go to digitalwealthpartners.net and go to the contact us form, and they can help you out. We got RB Dar. What's up, man? He says, hey, Jake, I just wanted to say thanks again for reaching back and pulling us along with you. It feels like we are circling the funnel now, full speed ahead. Can't wait to onboard as soon as possible. Cheers. Absolutely, dude. That's a good analogy. Circling the drain or the funnel. I don't know if you've ever rolled like a quarter on one of those, the charity thing, like circles really fast and then whoop, down the middle. That's kind of how I feel. I feel like everything's moving faster and faster now, and we are accelerating in the timeline and the adoption of this stuff. Oh man, a lot of comments on no sound here. I'm sorry that I had my sound messed up at the beginning of this. Again, you put new tech in, and sometimes it's not perfect. Michael, he says, I'm so freaking ready to be the first millionaire in my family. All I have left to do is connect my business account to Securitize, and I'm fully onboarded. Time for Jake to show me the money. Here you go, Michael. There it is. There's all the money right there. And you know it. So if you're on board with us, you probably got a big bag of XRP and maybe some Bitcoin. I don't know what all you have, but we have I think about 97% of what we manage at Digital Wealth Partners is XRP. And I anticipate that will be, if you missed Bitcoin, I think XRP is the next ticket. That's just my personal opinion. Again, not financial advice. Awesome to have you working with us, Michael. Excited to roll out the new opportunities that we're going to have here in August and mid-July for people. Again, I can't discuss exactly what they are yet, but the press releases will be pretty epic when they come out. Let's see here. We got Maris. What's up? He says, Jake, hope you're doing well, legend. Hypothetically, when putting our crypto with you, do you send it off your wallet into custody, or does it stay in the wallet? It goes into your own wallet. So we create an FBO account for you there at Anchorage. So what does FBO stand for? It is for the benefit of. It is you. It's just our account there at Anchorage. You own the assets. They're segregated, bankruptcy remote in your name. You can add your spouse as a signer. You add your beneficiaries to the account. And we're just an advisor that signs on it with you. At the end of the day, you make the choices on your assets. They are your assets. We do not rehypothecate them. They're not swapped or traded or done without your permission. They sit there in the wallet, yours, for you to do whatever you're going to do with it. And again, we have some different products that we're bringing to market in the short term in an SMA model or single managed account model that will allow you to put the asset to work without having to put it in the fund. We do believe that the funds will continue to outperform the returns on the SMA models over the long term. However, right now your assets aren't making you any money. So if you were able to just sit it somewhere and earn a risk-free or very low-risk return, sounds pretty good to me, right? So especially if there's no counterparty risk and the assets stay in your wallet, in your name, segregated, bankruptcy remote, and insured like they do at Anchorage. So again, yeah, you're going to have to move it off of your cold wallet. You would move it into institutional custody, which I can't say is quantum proof, but I can say is quantum resistant because of the way that they have things structured there. And over the long term, I think that that's going to be much safer than cold wallets. Charlie, you gave me the super chat, and there's nothing here, but I want to say thank you for the super chat. If I see a question down below, I will grab it. We have Off-Grid Hero. What's up, man? He says, after XRP hits 1K plus, will there be a house market crash? I don't think so. I think if you wanted the housing market crash, that was in 08. They really haven't been super lenient with the loans. And I don't think we're going to move into a depression. I know a lot of people are concerned about that. I think we may have a flash crash and a credit crisis when we see the reverse carry trade unwind. But it's going to be immediately a huge V bottom and rebound for the next decade with an expansion across all investments and asset classes as you have the advent of AI and blockchain, 3D printing. All these technologies converge in multiple sectors are going to drive significant depreciation across the cost of goods and manufacturing and a reduction in frictions, for payment flows. The velocity of money will pick up substantially because of the implementation of this technology. The efficiencies that will be created in purchasing a home or other assets will be significant. Instead of taking 30 to 90 days to purchase property, it could be down to 24 to 72 hours inside of a smart contract. So again, I just, the underwriting process and the title company and the escrow and the insurance and all the other things that go along with that, I think can be automated, and a lot of those frictions can be removed. And with that, you can still put lending standards in place and have certain criteria. And then it would be standardized too. Right now, there's a lot of leniency that gets put in, which can be good and bad, right? The good old boys club is a thing. It's how the world works. You can be mad about it, or you can play the game the way that it is today. The only way that you can change the way the game works is to win the game, and then you get your seat at the table, and then you can change the rules. But until then, you got to play by the rules that exist. So I don't think there's going to be another housing market crash. I do think that there's a commercial property crash at some point in the future, but I don't think residential housing is going to have another one. B-Man says, hey, Jake, is cash value life insurance a good option? When does private placement life insurance make sense upon price appreciation? So cash value life insurance can be a good option. Whole life policies can make sense in certain circumstances. I want people to understand that insurance is a tool, and there's a lot of different ways and products that people, sell and put it together. It all depends on your circumstance, and you want to work with a professional that has your interest at heart and not there to just shill you something to make money. So as an example, anybody that is preying on people that have a 401k and rolling it into an IUL, I don't like those people. An IUL is not a good product in 99% of the time for somebody that is retiring. Especially if it's a variable rate IUL. If it's a fixed rate IUL and you know what you're doing, there can be some benefit to that, and you just got to make sure it's structured the right way. But whole life insurance makes sense if you can fund it with large amounts of cash, and you do, at least a 5 to 10 pay, and then you can borrow against it, right? And most of the time, that's going to be indexed or variable. Because it's going to be invested in those, or the cash that you put into that policy is going to be invested in the market and can appreciate, and you can borrow against it at a very low interest rate. PPLI starts at $5 million, so you need $5 million, in investable income or an amount of money to fund a PPLI policy in most circumstances. We're going to launch some IDFs, which are insurance direct funds, and that'll bring the threshold for the PPLI down to like 1 or 2 million. But private placement is what really wealthy people use versus whole life. Whole life is more like you have a business that prints pretty good cash and you need to offset your income and you want some lines of credit for your business at low interest rates. That can be an effective tool. You also might want a modified endowment contract, or you might want a MECA policy, and you just dump a bunch of cash in there at one time because you're not really worried about borrowing against it. Again, all these things make sense in different circumstances depending on what you want to do. If you're insuring your grandchild's life, you can MEC it out. It doesn't matter because you're not going to borrow against it. Maybe you don't want them to be able to borrow against it either. So anyway, just work with, again, we've actually filed for an insurance firm. We got Carl von Schwartz working with us, and he's going to be the guy over there. I went and talked to him in Dallas today, and he will be working with all of our clients on the different insurance products that we're going to be providing. So we just went through that one. We got Charlie again with the super chat. Appreciate you, man. We got Michael Thielson. Probably butchered that. Sorry, brother. He says, I'm so freaking ready for the millionaire. He already read this one as well. Super excited for you, brother. And again, really happy to be working with you. They're digital wealth partners. We have ADR. They say, in theory, if you have 25 million in crypto post price appreciation and had to stay, have to stay in California, what would you do? Real estate, PPLI, curious on hypothetical for educational purposes only. Got to stay in California. Probably real estate, because you're going to need some way to offset the taxes. If you already had your assets in an LLC and it's in Wyoming, you could set up PPLI and do a key employee policy. This person's asked if I like Decent Wallet. Yes, I do. It's really the only cold wallet that I recommend, sir. I think there's a link in the bio if you want to go check it out. And we are an affiliate. I know people are going to give me hell. Get like $5 if you buy it, and you don't even have to use my link. I think it's the best one out there, and that's the only reason that we promote it and partner with those guys. So back to the question at hand here. California, we're going to be able, if you, don't sell it. Just hang out with it, borrow against it. That's probably what I would do. Because if you don't realize the gains, then California is not going to be taking 50% of it. So just don't sell, borrow against it would be my recommendation. But if you wanted to sell for whatever reason, probably get it into real estate. That's why a lot of people own real estate there in California, is because you can, again, 1031 and defer the taxes into another property. And maybe at the end of it, if you have enough properties, you could use a 721B and get that into, is it 721 or 709? I don't remember. I think it's a 721. You can roll it into a REIT through a 1031 exchange and get shares in the REIT and not have to manage the properties anymore. That's a pretty interesting strategy I've seen some people use. But again, the cost seg on the real estate is going to help you offset the income and the cash flow in order to mitigate taxes there in California. Setting it up inside of an insurance policy so that it can grow tax-free inside of that is also another great strategy. You've listed off two of them here. Any type of income off of the assets is going to be taxed at close to 50% if you're in the high tax bracket there in California. So you're going to need something. Go buy a ranch. Go be a rancher. Buy some raw land and run some cattle on it and get the ag on it and lose your ass 4 out of 5 years on managing that ranch there in California. Or I don't know if you could get a vineyard there in Napa, but those have a lot of tax benefits also there in California. We got Honest Aim. What's up, man? He says, Jake the Legend. You guys are killing me with the Legend deal. It's set up just like you said it would be. So we're so glad to be Mastermind members before price appreciation. We can't imagine being without your product, services, and the Mastermind community. Thank you. Thank you, man. Always appreciate you and your kind words and your support there in the community. We have like 3,600 people in the Mastermind, which is just crazy to think that we have so many cool, like-minded people as part of that community. And Honest Aim's an OG. He's seen it grow from, he was probably part of the first 50 people in the community. And I want to say this, and I've said it before, but I'll say it again. On the other side of price appreciation, we are locking the community down. So if you want to get in and lock in your spot and make sure you're part of the best community, and again, I'm biased here, in crypto, you want to go to beyondbroke.com and use the code beyondbroke, all capitalized, the number 1, and then MO, get you a free month there in the group, and you'll lock in the pricing. You get in before the rush. It's going to be $1,000 a month at a minimum on the other side of price appreciation, on the other side of a $10 XRP. So I'm not telling you what to do, but if you want to make sure you're locked in and part of the community that I think is going to be the best for deal flow, for continued education, for opportunities, for in real life events, like the yachts in Monaco, mile high masterminds on jets. We've already done one of those, which is cool. And a bunch of other cool exclusive events that we're going to curate for the community there. And again, the private deal flow that you're not going to get anywhere else. We have one running right now that's like super cool. I'm not going to talk about what it is, but I'll talk about what it does. They're actively finding guns in schools before there's a shooting, which is really cool. And I think on the other side of price appreciation, this is going to be how a lot of people, if you run a family office, this is how you tend to invest. You have a thesis, you have a mission statement, you have core values, and you invest in companies that are providing solutions in alignment with those values. We saw a lot of interest in this corporation, and I won't talk to the specifics of how they actually identify the firearm, even inside of a backpack or something else. But super cool to be able to bring stuff like that to the community. And yeah. Let's see here. We got Mauricio. What's up, man? He says, hey, Jake, from Guatemala. After price appreciation, how would I be able to invest and not look like money laundering LLC? Don't name it money laundering LLC for one. I mean, you show how you're making the money. You have audited financials, or something you can show the bank where this is how my assets were put to work. This is my partners. This is the cash flow that we're generating, and it's legitimate. It's not sketchy McGee. There's no. So the other reason it's not going to look like money laundering is it's all on chain and it's traceable. It's not cash. Money laundering businesses are always cash businesses. So I talk about some of these, like car washes. You've got laundromats. You've got nightclubs or gentlemen's clubs are often used to launder money. But any place that actually gets large amounts of cash tends to be what's used for money laundering purposes. What you're going to be doing can't be misconstrued as money laundering because it's not a cash business. There's no way to actually effectively launder any money because you can't mix it in with the other cash. So I don't think you're going to have that issue if you're working with us and generating returns with digital wealth partners. But if you're talking about lots of money coming in, I'm hoping you're right on that. I think you will be. Caden says, do you plan to buy any other crypto after XRP goes to 3 or 4 figures, or will it still be an XRP maxi till the end? There's lots of stuff that I will be buying on the other side of that I think will have pretty significant appreciation. I bought some hash not too long ago, so that's the first thing I bought that was not XRP in about 4 years. It's the token for Provenance's chain. They're doing some pretty unique lending on mortgages right now, and they also have a lot of insurance being built out on that network. Insurance is what I'm most interested in. It's a it's an $8.2 trillion asset class, about $3 to $5 billion in cash flow per day between premiums and claims. And they had $225 million worth of insurance tokenized on Provenance, which was effectively like 0.0047, like something super low, 27, something super low of the total market. But they were the only people that have traction in that area that are actually tokenizing insurance on chain. So that's why I made an allocation to that, because if they were able to get even 10% or 50% of that market, that's a huge move higher in that token to facilitate those payment flows and participate in those smart contracts. So that's why I made an allocation there. I love HBAR, XLM, Ondo. Like there's, I mean, I've done a lot of videos on my channel about a lot of other assets aside from XRP in the past. A lot of people are into, Chainlink or Velo or Stronghold. ZBEC was another one I just did not too long ago for like streaming payments. I think there's going to be a lot of other opportunities, and there definitely will be some diversification that's had on the other side of price appreciation into other assets in my portfolio. But I think the core of that portfolio is always going to be XRP, because if it's going to go to $100,000 and you got it at $2, one, I'm going to have a super low basis because I bought it even before $2. But most people are going to have a super low basis in comparison to the price. even if there's no cap gains on crypto, it's just you're not going to be able to buy it back. Is the other piece. I think all these structured products and these ETFs are how people are going to be able to get access to this stuff on the other side of price appreciation, and you're probably not going to have the accessibility that you do today. I think that's the other thing that people don't really recognize is we're in a really unique time now without regulation. And on the other side of regs, institutions buying these assets up is going to become prominent. And what's available in the secondary market isn't going to be anywhere near what it is today. We got Nick. He says, "Hey, mate, from Australia, whiskey time again. When do you think we can see ETFs going live now, BlackRock?" Any day. Any day in the near future, I think we're going to see these ETFs kick off here, especially with the news from Grayscale today. We got Kristen, or Christian. How are you, sir? He says, reached out to your office, got Rustin Deal's email, meeting with him Thursday. Very cool. Planning to set up a Dynasty Trust first, then Wyoming LLC as trustee. Once XRP appreciates, can I custody it with you based on token amount or dollar? Yeah, absolutely. Rustin will do a fantastic job. He set up more asset protection trusts than any other estate planner in the US when it comes to digital assets. And he will work with you to orchestrate whatever type of trust you want. I would encourage you to think of trust as contract law. There's a lot of people that have propagated certain marketing tactics around different types of trusts, which are really just how they wrote the trust, right? So a dynasty trust is written a specific way. It's got provisions in that contract that do certain things, but you could still have a spendthrift provision inside of that if you wanted it. You could add additional provisions or remove some things from what a traditional dynasty trust might be, and Rustin will help you do that. So he, you're weaving a tapestry of contract law inside of a trust, and it can be curated to you and your family. It doesn't have to be like this boilerplate type of trust. So I would just encourage you to do some research on the different types of trust and different provisions that you might want to put in there, and come to that conversation with Rustin with some of those in mind. And then he can help you weave that tapestry because that's what his expertise is. And he has a doctorate in tax law. So he's going to tell you how to mitigate taxes legally without any of the monkey business that we see. We got 7-0. What's going on? They say, to initially fund my business checking account, can I use personal funds? Would that pierce the corporate veil? Thanks again for your hard work. Yeah, the capital contribution. It just, so again, anytime you're moving stuff between your personal and the business, as long as it's documented and you have the capability to do that in the operating agreement, then you're good. So funding the bank account initially, you would just put that on your capital contributions page, and then you're good. There, it's documented that you put that cash into the business. So written action or written consent when you're moving cash in and out of the corporation would be ideal in order to make sure that the corporate veil remains intact. And again, if you're working with us, as things progress here, you'll be working with Laughlin to make sure that that's in place. We've already been through this one with Caden and a couple of these. It always kicks me up in the chat here. We've got Rick Evans. What's going on, Rick? He says, Mr. Legend, if they ever run a cyber blackout scenario with the World Economic Forum is stating is imminent, does the price of XRP crash for days or weeks before shooting to the moon? I think it just goes straight to the moon on the other side of that. I think there's a blackout, and on the other side of it, XRP is like $1,000. Just my, tinfoil hat. Hey, Jake, you heard when any of the 1,700 NDAs will expire. Are you under NDA too? I have some NDAs with different people. We might have some with that counterparty that you mentioned there around certain topics. So that's how NDAs are. They're over specific topics between counterparties, and you can state that you have an NDA with somebody else. You just can't talk about what the NDA you can't disclose, right? I don't know when those are going to come public, but I anticipate that a lot of them are going to start to wear off as soon as the lawsuit's done, and they'll snowball after Amazon comes out and says that they're partnered with Ripple. Katie Girl, hey ma'am. She says, happy Monday. Do you think Powell will actually cut rates in July? How much does he need to cut to kick off the reverse carry trade? I think the reverse carry trade is going to kick off, and then they will cut rates. I think they need to cut rates in order to stimulate the economy and incentivize people to borrow again and refinance homes and drive growth, but they're only going to do that after we get the crash. I don't think they're going to do it to get the crash. We already went over this one. We got Nicole. Hey, ma'am. She says, imagine we are watching your documentary several years into the future. What does the reenactment scene look like for the moment you connected all the dots and decided to go all in and make this your mission? Thank you. Man. You're going to find this funny. So Bearable Bull has come out and shown his face now. But I watched him and Brad Kimes and DAI for years before I ever started making any content or doing what I'm doing now. And there was one specific video that the Bearable Bull put out in 21 that kind of like Not Financial Advice that has the Washington guy on his stuff. He did that 2-minute video that gives you like everything real fast. Bearable Bull put one together that was like a synopsis that was like 50 minutes long of like the IMF and the Fed and like just back-to-back things about why XRP was the one. And after I watched that, I like dove in head first and did some research over the next 6 weeks. And I really couldn't poke any holes in what he had said. And then additionally, like XRP being used at scale for stuff. And that's when I was like, okay, all right, well, I'm just going to consolidate my position. And I finally did that in early 22. Should have sold and bought back later. But yeah, I remember sitting in the truck and like reconciling that in my mind and then moving everything. Got TV for XRP says, with the stablecoin bill, they will probably give her Tether a few years to come into compliance. I don't think so. Not completely collapse the system with the affect your theory greatly and price by the end of year. Look, I've talked to too many people that have already de-risked from Tether and told me to stay far, far away from it because it's going to have problems like MasterCard. So just, again, I have a different perspective because of the conversations and rooms I've been in and people I've had the privilege of chatting with. And that's what gives me the confidence to say the stuff that I do also. So pretty confident that they are definitely going to have some issues. Mauricio, man, thank you so much for the super chat. You didn't have to do that, dude. That's, wow. Thank you. He says, if Tether's going to crash, will Tether affect the price of XRP if it continues in the market? For a short period of time, I think everything will crash. I don't think it'll last very long. I think that they'll roll the ETFs. I think that there'll be a lot of stuff that causes a huge price spike in XRP. And again, that's why I'm positioned there versus anything else. I don't think you're going to have an opportunity to buy XRP at low prices. I think there'll be a liquidity crunch or crisis that's orchestrated, and that's also going to cause the appreciation of XRP, but it may see a dip for a short period of time before that happens. We got Brandon. What's up, man? He says, Jake, thank you for all that you do. Love your optimism. If XRP was $10,000, is there enough money in the world to cover a bunch of people cashing out? So they print money, Brandon. This is hard to like. Growing up, my parents told me money didn't grow on trees, and your parents probably did too. That's a lie. It is more abundant than you could possibly imagine. Money is energy, and they print it out of thin air. And banks print it. There'll always be more than enough to cover whatever is going to happen. Okay. So they literally print Tether out of thin air and then back it with treasuries. They go buy the treasuries with the money they printed. It's fugazi, like it doesn't exist. And that's why things that have a finite supply like XRP and Bitcoin are so sought after by people, because they can just print in perpetuity. It's paper at the end of the day. The only reason it has value is we say it has value, which is a crazy concept. Like they've just conned everybody into believing this stuff because there's nothing backing it. I do think that they're going to back it, though. I think they're going to have to go back to gold, and they will use oil, and they will use XRP, and there'll be hard backing for the treasuries, which will then be backed. The currencies or the stable coins will then be backed by the treasuries. So kind of like a quasi. It's one layer removed, so it won't allow the public to buy, to exchange their dollars for gold. But people to buy treasuries would be able to, and that goes back to Judy Shelton and what she wants. So yeah, there's enough money to cover it, my man. They can always print more of it. Brian says, "What's up, my brother? What's going on? Hypothetically, if XRP was to run to $2,500 and one wanted to unload 100,000 coins fast, what's the fastest and safest way to get from a Trezor device to a standard bank in the U.S.? Let's go." 2,500 at $100,000 or 100,000 XRP. That's going to be 2.5 billion. Where's my phone? I guess my other phone's not here, which is weird. Yeah, I mean, that's a lot of money. It's 250 million, 2.5 billion, one of the two. You're going to need somebody that has that much liquidity to provide you, for one. So you're going to need an OTC desk or large institution. You're probably going to do TWAP for that much. So what is TWAP? It's a time volume weighted average over a period of time. You wouldn't sell that in a lump sum because it would affect the market. Again, you borrow against it. Borrowing against it probably be the fastest way to do it, to be honest with you. If you were in the Mastermind, you could just work with Arch Lending. We have an exclusive agreement with them where you can borrow against your XRP and be liquid and get your USDC to your wallet or your exchange in less than an hour, and whatever lump sum you needed. And hopefully you wouldn't have it on your Trezor. If you got 100,000 XRP, hopefully you're working with Digital Wealth Partners and you have it there, and you could get it into cash at the cheapest cost through them. It'd be 20 basis points. So it'd be, if you sold $1 million, it'd be $2,000. If you do that on Caleb or Brown, it's $35,000. Very expensive. And for liquidating that much, $250 million, you're gonna be paying a good chunk of change in a fee again just to liquidate it. So up to you, but yeah, I would say probably just holding it with Digital Wealth Partners, and you could liquidate it and wire it to your bank account. Would probably be the fastest way to do it. We've got NM Hawk. What's up, man? He says, "Hey Jake, just want to say thank you for all the information that you share. We all appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you for the kind words. I enjoy doing this. I get a lot of fulfillment from it. And yeah, appreciate you guys asking good questions." We got George. What's up, man? He says, the legend. "Big players keep buying ETH and BTC. Nobody seems to buy XRP. They're buying. I'm telling you, I know some big players that are buying XRP. Anybody can utilize XRPL or ODL, etc., without the need to hold XRP. How or why do you keep talking about supply shock? Love you." So you're correct. You can utilize the DEX on the XRPL, but it's going to route through what's most liquid, or the path of least resistance. And the more liquidity that's in XRP, the more often XRP would be used to route that liquidity or exchange through the DEX on the XRPL. And then ODL is a product that Ripple provides where they loan XRP. So I'm not sure. I mean, I guess what you're saying is people wouldn't need to hold XRP because they could just borrow from Ripple. Banks and institutions aren't trying to pay a bunch of interest, and Ripple's trying to make money. So I think they would prefer to own it themselves outright, especially if they could buy it cheap, versus paying Ripple interest in perpetuity when they don't have it. You got ETFs. ETFs are going to have to purchase it off of the secondary market or through dark pools or OTC desks in order to fund whatever the ratio is between the shares they issue and the amount of XRP that they're supposed to be holding. So that is, again, a supply mechanism, supply and demand. We've seen that with Bitcoin and what that's caused. You've also got people buying XRP up for their treasury, people buying it up for their payment corporation. I know a few people specifically that are doing that to be able to take that as a write-off, which is interesting in their business. Bitcoin and ETH just have a lot of liquidity and market share, and people know what those are, so they call them blue chip. I think we're still super early to say anything's a blue chip other than XRP, to be honest with you. But again, and exchanges can also ration the supply that they provide for retail to be able to purchase. People the other day freaked out when I posted, the exchanges reduce their available supply, and they were like, well, they didn't move it out of the wallets. No, they didn't move it out of the wallets. The exchanges all have an internal accounting mechanism that sit on top of the wallets that allow them to toggle up or down how much is available on the exchange. And again, people are just ignorant. They don't know that. I'm not holding it against them, but they see one thing from one person and they, have an ego and want to run their mouth like they know, when in reality they have no clue because they don't work with these counterparties. So anyway, a supply shock can definitely be orchestrated, and I think it will be orchestrated in order to drive the price to the levels that it needs to be in order to facilitate payment flows when the time comes for that. And then they'll run the payment flows through it, and it'll hold that price. And I think that's been the plan the whole time. Will Cotton says, what if I wanted to do real estate in another country? Is that something you could help with? I want to move to Mexico. What would like to do it there and would like to do it there? We have some people in Mexico. I don't know if you're looking for Cozumel or somewhere off the coast. Went to Isla Mujer in Mexico, which was very nice. If you guys haven't been there, pretty cool. Beautiful, beautiful beach there on the Isla Mujer. Yeah, we have people in Mexico that we could connect you with. Hopefully you speak Spanish if you're going to be buying some real estate there in Mexico. Otherwise, you could have some problems. Your name is Will Cotton. Not being racist, but hopefully you speak Spanish if that's the direction you want to go. I would encourage you to start to learn Spanish if you don't know it yet. We do have 30 minutes left, so we're going to go through the lightning round on the super chats here. We've got 3 digits. Digits? Jake, I like you a lot, man. Appreciate you. I like you too. Thank you for the super chat, and thanks for asking good questions. He says, but you telling people that XRP is going to hit $1,000 is Moonboy-ish, bro. You broed me, dude. When you're wrong, the people will turn on you, and you'll have to be the new Raoul Powell of today. Look, man, I'm happy to say I'm wrong if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty confident I'm not going to have to. I know it's hard for people to comprehend that type of appreciation on an asset. especially with a large supply, people want to look at, market cap and other dynamics. I've explained all this in videos on how these are protocols and not corporations, and they have different pricing dynamics, and supply and demand operates a bit differently than shares on an open market. Again, total supply and available supply are not the same thing, whereas there's a difference when it comes to stocks. So, I wouldn't come out here and risk my reputation and say these things if I wasn't extremely confident that it will play out. Because there's a lot to risk, right? Like we do have real businesses that do real things and provide real services and products. And so for me to come out here and state these things, is it a risk? Sure. Is it calculated? Absolutely. I would say that when I'm right, I will garner a lot more respect and admiration from people than other people that don't speak their mind or stay small or are conservative, even though they might have different ideas versus what they say in public. I come out here and talk exactly like I would to you in person. I don't try to sugarcoat anything or, hedge like a lot of people do. Again, I say I don't have a crystal ball. I'm not the end all be all. I'm just another guy, and I am. But I will say that I've had conversations that other people haven't had, and in those conversations, the outcomes and what was stated there make me confident in my thesis. So, and that's okay if it rubs people the wrong way. I don't mind being polarizing, and the right people come into my life that I align with, and so I'm cool with that. If it rubs somebody the wrong way, they probably don't need to be a client anyway. Justin says, "Hey Jake, do you think Swift will use XRP this year? Swift ISO 20022 and the ETF send XRP to 4 digits this year. Thank you for your time and knowledge. Give my uncle Danny a shout out. We both love you. Awesome. Appreciate you and Uncle Danny here on the live, hanging out with me, asking good questions. So you named 3 things here. I think one of those things will cause appreciation for XRP, while the other ones would maintain appreciation for XRP. So we do have FedNow going live July 14th domestically here in the US. XRP won't be used to be able to settle those transactions unless there's enough liquidity in XRP. So you need the ETFs, you need a supply shock to drive the price of XRP to $100, 50 to $100 before it could even begin to settle those payment flows for Swift in that capacity. So, and FedNow and FedWire are 2 separate things. FedNow is domestic. FedWire, I know, is international, and that would be correlated with Swift versus domestic ACH transfer. I'm aware, so again, people are going to be like in the comments, I spend all day on this stuff, all day, every day. So anyway, I think the ETFs and other dynamics could cause it to go to 4 digits by the end of the year. And I do think if there's enough liquidity in XRP, there's a lot of markets and payment flows that would then be routed through the XRPL and XRP to be able to settle those transactions at scale. We've got Brass Balls. What's up? They say, with the lawsuit ending, does that mean Ripple will not be allowed to sell XRP to institutions? That's my understanding, but the attorneys are saying something different. So we'll see, I guess, is the answer to that. But I think they don't want to, because they do want to orchestrate a supply shock. Ripple wants XRP to appreciate just as bad as we do, because it helps their business valuation and a lot of other things they're trying to accomplish. Frank D, what's up, man? He says, "Hey Jake, what do you recommend for someone with sub 50,000 XRP that wants institutional custody, or is there something else you'd recommend?" We talked about Vault and Decent Wallet. Zaman, I think, is another good solution. Going to come out with a wallet separate of Zaman in the near future, because Zaman started charging large fees. I don't know if you guys have seen that or not, but if you send over a certain amount, they whack you for like 30 to 60 XRP now. I'm like, For what? What are you doing? Why are you taking my XRP? So not super happy about that. But anyway, yeah, unfortunately, there's not really an institutional custody option that meets the level of institutional custody that it's my standard for anybody that has less than 50,000 XRP. But again, I don't think you're gonna have to wait that long. If we see any type of price appreciation, like I think on XRP, you're gonna have more than enough to work with digital wealth partners in the very, very near future. Wayne, what's up, Wayne? He says, is accredited required for DWP custody crypto? No, it's not. You don't have to be accredited to work with us just for custody. It's just for the growth fund and the income fund. And if you want to know more about new opportunities, you just need to talk to your advisors at Digital Wealth Partners once you're onboarded for custody. And they can tell you about the new opportunities that are coming. Are there any benefits to putting XRP in custody, even though an LLC before price appreciation or waiting until after appreciation? There's a lot of benefits to an LLC before price appreciation. We've talked about those at length. I haven't talked about that tonight. If you want to set up a corporation to be able to manage your digital assets, it is a prerequisite to work with Digital Wealth Partners that your assets are held in a corporation or an entity. Could be a trust, could be an IRA, can be an LLC, could be a limited company if you're overseas. All of those work. If you're here domestic in the US and you want to set up an LLC to manage your digital assets, all you got to do is go to digitalfamilyoffice.io and use the code 50OFF, 50OFF, DAG, like Digital Ascension Group, LLC, and it gets you everything you need for $2,000, and you get to protect the corporate veil with our paralegal firm. We're rolling out that to people over the next 6 months here that have been working with us. So yeah, definitely some benefits there. And again, if you want to know about other ways to generate income or returns on your XRP, you just need to talk to your advisor there at Digital Wealth Partners about the opportunities that are coming in the near future. Mike, what's up, Mike? He says, some people I follow think that holding XRP forever will grant some unknown or uninvented financial privilege or benefit. They're hell-bent on programmable money theory. Is that fear warranted? A little bit. Yeah. I mean, yeah, a little bit. So XRP cannot be frozen or clawed back because it's the native asset on that chain, and any issued assets can be. So any CBDCs, any stable coins, anything else that's an issued asset, whoever the issuer is pretty much controls it. And they can determine whether it needs to be clawed back or frozen or whatever else. Whereas XRP in and of itself can never be by anyone because the origin account's been black holed. So, I mean, they're kind of right. I don't like to fearmonger. It's not my style. It's not my game. I would rather empower people with knowledge and education and make sure that they know what they're talking about and are able to handle themselves in a responsible manner. I don't, need to tell you that the world's ending and use fear porn and all the other stuff that people do. But in this circumstance, I do think that there is some truth to the statement that you've made here. We have a couple more super chats, then we're going to wrap it up tonight. We got Ashley. Hey, ma'am. She says, would you consider letting Carbon members invest at a lower threshold of XRP? Also, can you clarify if it's 100K worth of XRP or 100K XRP tokens? It is 100,000 XRP tokens or close to $250,000 at the current time. And they are welcome to invest in XRP. I think you're asking if they can work with us in custody. So the custody, and I'll talk about this publicly, the custody minimum on the other side of price appreciation for people in the mastermind will be $1 million. Anybody outside of the mastermind, it'll be $20 million. We will only work with family offices on the other side of price appreciation that are outside the mastermind. So that'll be the minimum for anybody that is not inside the mastermind. Anybody inside the mastermind, there'll be a much lower threshold than $1 million. I don't think, look, I know a lot of people, they're like, oh, XRP is going to go to $10 or $13 or these chump change numbers. When XRP goes, it's going to move in ways that people cannot wrap their mind around. 50 or $100 is going to come in the blink of an eye for XRP when it goes. Okay, so again, that'd be 10,000 XRP to be at $1 million at $100 XRP. And again, people are going to be like, oh, you shouldn't say that, this, that, and the other. Look, I know what I'm talking about. I know there's going to be a supply shock. I have a lot of reasons to believe that. And when it moves, it's going to move fast. It's not going to be like, slow grind up like Salana or some of these other ones, okay? So I'm going to make sure people are taken care of, especially if they're in the mastermind. I wish I could do it today. Unfortunately, economics really don't work for less than $250,000 worth of assets. We've done it a couple times and brought it down to the 50 to allow people in. But the threshold is 100,000 XRP currently, or at least $500,000 in total portfolio value for your digital assets at this time. Wood Stove Bear. They say, could banks kick the can down the road for another few years? Could they make their own money system or crypto? If you're correct, I will go from a few $1,000s of XRP to multimillionaire this year. Yeah. They don't want to. They've already kicked the can a long time. Banks have kicked the can since 2008. They've been waiting on this solution to be ready, again, with BlackRock. Like we talked about a lot of this stuff earlier this evening. BlackRock has orchestrated everything that they have in order to restructure the debt. That's what they do. That's what they were created for. And, become what they've become in order to be able to restructure the debt and make sure that things are healthy in the financial system. And XRP is going to play a big role in that. That's why Robbie Mitchnick is the head of digital assets at BlackRock. So no is the answer. I don't think they're going to kick the can any further. I think they've kicked it as far as they need to kick it. Could they kick it? You said, could banks kick it? Yeah, they could kick it further if they needed to. They don't need to, though. And they won't make their own money system or crypto because they can't trust the other counterparties, and this is the one that they made. Like that's the other piece people don't know is like, this is the one that they made. Go look up all the seed round investors for R3. It's all the investment banks, JP Morgan, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, BNY, all of them. And guess, who doesn't have a token that uses XRP as their main settlement mechanism? R3. Y'all see me with the mug all the time. So anyway, like they did make this one. This is the one they chose. I don't get to make those decisions. I just happen to be in rooms where things are discussed. So anyway, excited for you. I think you're in a good spot, and hopefully we'll be working with you in the near future. We got Sean Sides. He says, with logarithmic increases, that's what I'm talking about, dude. People don't know. Logarithmic increases. Do you see sideways action lasting 6 months or more in the future? Why do so many believe utility won't affect normal crypto cycles for the next 4 years? Thanks for everything, legend. People get used to pattern recognition, and then they just rely on that. And when constraints change, they still think that the patterns that they've seen in the past will play out. This time is different, irrespective of what people say. We've got ETFs. We had Bitcoin hit an all-time high before the halving, which has never happened before. There's different constraints in the market today than there have ever been in the past. And institutions and their adoption here cause different price dynamics. And on the other side of that, utility will also cause different price dynamics. And people haven't seen that before, so it's hard for them to comprehend or move out of the cyclical cycles that they've seen in the past. Because again, the pattern recognition. So all this stuff happens in cycles. If you look, you can read Ray Dalio's book, Principles is good, but he also has one on cycles where he talks about the last 5 100-year cycles for money and the last 5 reserve currencies. And to break out of that cycle, this will be even different. I think this is a longer term cycle that we're finishing now that happens every like 2,000 or 2,500 years, where we go back to, a universal currency type thing, which XRP is. We've got Glenn. What's up, Glenn? He says, thank you for the hours you spend making these videos. Absolutely, dude. I enjoy it. You explain things easy and direct. You're a legend in Canada. Can only get XRP on Ledger or Wealthsimple. Is that the same as XRP? I don't know. I don't know if XRP Ledger on Wealthsimple is the same as XRP. I would look at the total. So this is a problem. Like people that list stuff on other platforms like Lobster Wallet trick people. And they'll say it's one thing, it's something else. So look at the total market cap. Look at the total supply. If it's 100 billion, look on the XRPL on XRP scan and check the wallet address that you're buying from and make sure that it matches the wallet that you see on XRP scan and the wallet that you see on their exchange. If you verified that, then it is XRP. Getting close to the 2-hour mark here. We're going to go ahead and wrap it up at 11 o'clock. So I'm going to try to get through the last bit of the super chats before we lock it down tonight. And speaking of lock it down, again, if you guys want to make sure that you're in the mastermind before price appreciation and we lock that down, I would encourage you to use the code Beyond Broke, all capitalized, the number 1, and then MO gets you a free month there in the group, and you lock in the pricing, which is going to go up a lot on the other side of price appreciation, and it's going to be much more stringent on who's allowed there in the community. We got Stephen Forward. He says, hey, Jake, I have a family trust in Australia. I own over 30,000 XRP. Don't tell people how much you got, Stephen. How do I move them into the trust? Is it worth it with our tax laws? It's highly worth it, Stephen. It's extremely worth it. I would go ahead and move. I can't give you financial advice. If I were you, and I had that much XRP and I had a family trust there in Australia, I would get my assets in that trust as soon as possible out of my personal name, because you're going to get a lot of tax benefits from being inside that trust. You are going to have to pay taxes when it goes in, but the lower the value it is when it goes in, the better off you're going to be. So that's why I'm saying I would do it now. You would love to have done it at like 30 cents and just paid the taxes on it then versus now. But now you still have an opportunity before it goes much higher to get it in there. So again, I can't give you financial advice. Go talk with your own CPA. You can reach out to Consensus Layer and ask for David there in Australia, and they can help you out. But that'd be, if I was you, I would expedite that. Trying to get through all the super chats. I got a couple more here. We got Harley, F250 guy. You and my wife get along. In your opinion, would it be wise to sell off 25K Bitcoin to purchase XRP at the moment? 2, I currently have a Tangem wallet. Thoughts? I like Tangem. Tangem's good. I'll put it to you this way. I would go look at the XRP versus Bitcoin chart, and you can make that decision for yourself. It looks very compelling that XRP is going to appreciate against Bitcoin in the short term. So up to you. Not sure what your long-term goals are. So it'd be hard to tell you one way or the other. If you're looking for wealth preservation, you might just, hold it there in BTC. If you're looking for ROI, seems like XRP would probably be the better play. Zeus Fox Knight. Wow. What a name. Pretty cool. Where do you find the conviction to say XRP is going to $1,000? Why do you believe when stablecoin regs go live, only 100 projects will survive? Shock. Tether. Tether's going to have some pretty significant implications for the market. Anything that's tied to Tether and its liquidity is tied to Tether is going to sink along with it. And what survives will be separate of that and utility driven. and Brad Garlinghouse, not just me, Brad Garlinghouse has said that 99.9% of projects go to zero. So you don't have to believe me, just believe Brad. And then if you want to know why I have the conviction on the $1,000 XRP, you can listen to Arthur Brito. Arthur Brito said XRP is designed for $10,000. So I'm actually a little bit shy of what it's actually meant to be. So about 1/10 of what I think it's going to go to over the long term. We got Cotton Clark's A says, Jake just signed up with the Mastermind. Awesome, dude. The whole journey reminds me of a quote. We often favor a known captive to an unknown freedom. I'm tired of the captive. You? Yeah. Sometimes the grass is greener, dude. The grass is greener where you water it also, right? So a lot of people are scared of the devil that they don't know versus the one that they do. There's a lot of sayings. Ignorance is bliss. There's a lot of stuff, but like, you don't know what you don't know, and putting yourself inside of a community with so many like-minded people and people that have different experiences, like that's the whole point of a mastermind. You're able to gain perspective from other people that you would never have just on your own. And I don't know if you guys have ever read Think and Grow Rich, but that is one of the principles in Think and Grow Rich is a mastermind. Ray, hey Jake, he says, how do you recommend handling ledgers that have requested the OS updates? Also, who is the contact in your office to discuss formation of an LLC versus a trust? Thanks. It's really the value of your assets currently that would determine whether you want to set up an LLC or a trust. If your assets are north of at least $500,000, it might be time to consider setting up a trust. If it's less than that, probably wait and just do it post price appreciation on that side. The LLC makes sense for most people that have somewhere between 50 and 80,000 or more in dollars of current portfolio value. That's when it starts to make sense to set up an LLC to manage your digital assets. So that would be how I would determine which one I would do. If you got, somewhere between $500,000 and $750,000, might be a good idea to look at a trust, but you're going to still set up an LLC anyway, 99% of the time, even if you do set up the trust, because you want an LLC outside of the trust that you can pass the taxes to off the trust, because anything in trust is going to be taxed at anything more than $15,000 in income inside of a trust is taxed at 37.5%. And if you could pass the income to an LLC, you're going to be taxed at a much lower tax bracket most of the time. And then the ledger, I would just get it off the ledger. I wouldn't even play with that fire. I know a lot of people are like, but it's easy and I have it on here. Cool. You risk it for the biscuit, but I wouldn't even play with that fire. DWP since January. Awesome, man. Entered on 50 plus program, not accredited yet in full time, in 10 full time. What happens to the first $10 XRP of non-accredited opportunity to the income fund? Thank you for your team for all that you do. Excuse me. Reach out to your advisor about the new opportunities that are coming down the pike here. I can't say more than that. I wish I could. But I think you'd be surprised to learn some of the stuff that we're going to be providing people, especially for people like yourself that have been here and been paying the fees and have been in. Again, and I've said this before, people that are loyal to us and people that are proactive and people that work with us for an extended period of time, we are loyal to you and we will always take care of you. So, how much would it cost to get the Rockefeller waterfall method, including LLC, set up with Digital Ascension Group? It depends. Depends on the amount of assets you're doing. A lot of that stuff's AUM based, especially when it comes to insurance policies. And it depends on the type of assets, how you want to orchestrate the waterfall with the insurance and the trusts. It's there's nuance there. right? So for me to spit out a dollar amount, I'm just shooting myself in the foot because inevitably, when assets appreciate, it's going to cost more than that with AUM because that's how people price things when they manage capital and for insurance policies. AUM is assets under management. They normally do basis points or a percentage for the fees on that stuff. We got Darren. Thank you for the super chat, brother. I don't see a question, but appreciate you on the $10. We got NM Hawk says is 5K XRP a good amount to be at upon price appreciation. Whatever you can afford to invest, everybody's in a different position. There's no wrong amount of XRP or right amount of XRP to have. Everybody's in a different position in their life and has different amount of disposable income that's not going to affect their bills. So, again, not financial advice, but if you're able to invest what you can, any amount is better than none, for sure, in my personal opinion. Do you think ISO 20022 implementation increases the price of XRP? I do not. Nope. I think that price appreciation of XRP has to happen before that's implemented in order for it to be used in the capacity that people are hopeful for. I don't think that the actual implementation does anything. Is it safe to, well, besides maintain price stability if it's already up there, is it safe to keep our XRP on Zaman? Yeah, I like Weedsay. I think he has a good product. It's also removes somebody from doing keystroke software because they randomly select the stuff and you have to toggle to put in the key in order to reorchestrate the wallet. I think he's done a good job with security measures on that. And you can use a Tangent card, which is also cool. Do LLCs have a lower tax rate when it comes to off-ramping selling XRP? I don't understand the benefit. So they have pass-through taxation. You get to file as an S-Corp, but you get the full breadth of the tax code that you can use to offset that income if you are going to liquidate some. So let's say you want to travel post-price appreciation somewhere, and you happen to be going to a conference alongside that trip. You can write the whole trip off. Let's say you wanted to go look at a real estate property in another country. You get to write everything off because you're going to go look at that investment because this is an investment management company that we set up. Let's say you want to have a publication that you read on a regular basis that talks about digital assets or investing or something else to do with your business for your education and your knowledge. You get to write that off, right? Your vehicle that you drive to go look at properties or meet with people to have business conversations, you get to write that off. If you want to set up an insurance policy, you're a key employee of that corporation. It doesn't function without you, so it has insurable interest, so you can write that off. You can also squeeze the value of your assets to be able to gift more of them out of your estate into a trust if you want to do that on the other side of price appreciation by gifting small pieces of equity to people that you want to take care of anyway. And with minority owners on the cap table, the valuation, or if you get a 409A done, it might be at a 35% discount to the actual value of the assets in the corporation. So there's a ton of things that the asset being inside of an LLC will do for you. Also to be able to transact and move large amounts to your bank account. Probably going to be much better off if it's inside of a corporation instead of your personal name. I had to deal with that today. So anyway. Jay Noop, what's up, man? He says, General Jake, post appreciation, do we know when to move the assets back into the exchange and cash out, running from apps, taking our XRP to the cold wallet? Just work with us at Digital Wealth Partners, man. You can do it all there in one spot. And then lastly, we have Armando Hernandez. Jeez, it's late. Is it safe to keep XRP and Uphold Vault? Yeah, I like Vault. Again, we're going to have a conversation with Uphold here in the near future about that product and some of the services that we can partner with them on. So we are at the end of the 2 hours here. Appreciate you guys taking time out of your evening to hang out with me. If you like this, if you think this is cool, I didn't even say it, but please like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. It does help the algorithm and help the channel. Same thing over here on TikTok. I appreciate you guys in there on X. If you guys can watch me, it's been weird on X here lately. But if you do want to join the mastermind, again, we're going to lock it down on the other side of price appreciation. I would encourage you to get in now if you want to do it, because I don't think we have that much longer with everything that's playing out here and where things are at. So if that's interesting to you, it's at beyondbroke.com, and you can use the code beyondbroke, all capitalized, the number 1, and then MO, get you a free month there in the group. Try it out. If you don't like it, you don't like Discord, you don't get your value, you can cancel at any time. It's month to month. You know, we do have like 3,600 people that are there in the group, in the community, that are hanging out because they are finding a lot of value for the price point. So Carbon One, I think, is $100 a month. I don't think, I know it's $100 a month. Social is $25 a month, and all those prices are locked in. All the tiers get locked in if you're in now before price appreciation. If you do need an LLC to manage your digital assets, we had a couple different discussions on why that would be a good idea. You can go ahead and go to digitalfamilyoffice.io and use the code 50OFF, 50OFF DAG LLC, and that gets you everything you need for your wealth management corporation or alternative investment management corporation for managing your digital assets set up in Wyoming. We didn't talk about all the stuff there in Wyoming and why, but you need it in Wyoming. Trust me. You get all of it for $2,000 if you use the code 50OFF, 50OFF DAG LLC. And then last but not least, if you do want institutional custody, the ability to borrow against your digital assets, advisory on your digital assets, and the opportunity to generate returns on your XRP, I would encourage you to go check out digitalwealthpartners.net. Go through the contact us page there. You're going to need your assets in an LLC inside of a trust, or we'll take an IRA and help you generate returns there on your crypto. XRP in particular, the minimums, again, one more time for people, is 100,000 XRP or at least $500,000 in current portfolio value if your assets are diversified. So that's it. That's all I got for you guys tonight. I hope you have a wonderful week. We'll be back Wednesday at 11 a.m. or sorry, oh, that's the mastermind. Wednesday at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time. And until then, God bless, and we'll see you guys on the next one.